We repeated this type of experiment 14 times. 5 times involved the target being a small permanent magnet. Five times also involved a steel ball bearing as the target. Twice the target was water. 2 additional trials were made, one with a paper-wrapped ball bearing and one with a sugar cube. The latter 2 targets were not located. Geller felt that he didn't have adequate confidence as to where they were, and he declined to guess and passed. On the other 12 targets, the ball bearing, the magnet, and the water, he did make a guess as to the target location and was correct in every instance. In subsequent work with another subject, we found the subject experiencing a highly significant difference in his ability to find various targets as compared with finding the steel ball bearing. The whole array of this run had an a priori probability of 1 part in 10 to the 12th, or statistics of 1,000,000,000 to 1. Here's another double-blind experiment in which a die is placed in a metal box, both box and die being provided by SRI. The box is shaken up with neither the experimenter nor Geller knowing where the die is or which face is up. This is a live experiment that you see. In this case, Geller guessed that a 4 was showing, but first he passed because he was not confident. You will note that he was correct, and he was quite pleased to have guessed correctly, but this particular test does not enter into our statistics. The previous runs of tin-can roulette gave a result whose probability due to chance alone is 1 part in 10 to the 12th. We decided at the outset to carry out the die and box experiment until we got to 1,000,000 to 1 odds, at which time the experiment was terminated. Out of 10 tries in which he passed twice and guessed 8 times, the 8 guesses were correct, and that gave us a probability of about 1 in 1,000,000. We would point out again there were no errors in the times he made a guess. This is the first of 2 experiments in psychokinesis. Here, a 1-gram weight is being placed on an electrical scale. It is then covered by an aluminum can and then by a glass cylinder to eliminate any deflections due to air currents. The first part of our protocol involves tapping the bell jar. Next, tapping the table. Then kicking the table. And finally, jumping on the floor, with a record made of what these artifacts looked like so that they could be distinguished from signals. In tests following this experimental run, static electricity was discharged against parts of the apparatus. A magnet was brought near the apparatus, and controlled runs of day-long operation were obtained. In no case were artifacts obtained which in any way resembled the signals produced by Geller, nor could anyone else duplicate the effects. On this chart recorder printout, the bottom 4 signals show the type of artifact that results from tapping or kicking the table. They are small AC signals with a time constant characteristic of the apparatus. The upper 2 traces, on the other hand, are apparently due to Geller's efforts. They are single-sided signals, one corresponding to a 1,500 milligram weight decrease, the other corresponding to an 800 milligram weight increase. Those types of single-sided signals were never observed as artifacts with any other stimuli. We have no ready hypothesis on how these signals might have been produced. The width of the signals produced by Geller was about 200 milliseconds. The chart ran at 1 millimeter per second. It was of interest to note that Geller's performance improved over the period of experimentation, starting with 50 milligram deflections and arriving at 1,500 milligrams. In this experiment, Geller attempts to influence a magnetometer either directly or by generating a magnetic field. The full-scale sensitivity of the instrument is 3/10 of a Gauss, and as is clear in this instance, his hands are open. Throughout the experiment, his hands do not come into contact with the instrument. The magnetometer itself was used as a probe to go over his hands and person to make sure that there were no magnetic objects in his hands or on him. Here you see substantial fluctuations both to the left and to the right, almost full scale in certain cases on the magnetometer meter. These fluctuations are sometimes uncorrelated with the motions of his hands. This is the chart recording of the magnetometer fluctuations produced by Geller. We see here full-scale fluctuations of 3/10 of a Gauss, which is a significant magnetic field, comparable to the Earth's field. After each of these experiments, we would in general discuss the results with Geller, show him the strip chart recording, and talk about the significance of his experiments. He was very interested in the experiments we were doing because he had never taken part in laboratory experiments of this kind before.